Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Pod Save Chocolate. My name is Clay Gordon, and I'm your host. And today we're going to talk about the 50 absolute best chocolate shops in the U.S. by state. Or are they? So before we jump into today's episode, I want to remind everybody that they can go into the live chat on YouTube or to the comments on LinkedIn or Facebook. Let me know where in the world you are connecting from. I'll get that shout out up on screen. And if you'd like to contribute anything during the course of the episode, whether it is a comment or a question, you can again go to the live chat or the comments on LinkedIn and Facebook, and you can ask me them or let me know what you're thinking there. And again, I will engage with your comment or question during the course of the episode. This episode of Pod Save Chocolate, like every episode of Pod Save Chocolate, is sponsored by the members of The Chocolate Life. And here's the homepage of The Chocolate Life right now. You can go there and you can find out all sorts of stuff. I mean, there are over 1,500 articles that are currently posted. But if you want to support the work we're doing, there's a join link. It's this green link at the top of the page. I'm logged in, so it says account, but you can go there. It'll say join if you're not a member. And you can become a member of The Chocolate Life and support the work that we're doing. I create all this work at no charge to you. It's supported by the members, and I give it away for free to the world. So if you'd like to support the work we do, I would appreciate that very, very much. But today's episode is all about the 50 best chocolate shops in the United States. And this is based on a listicle that I found at Chowhound. So I figured, let's go take a look at what Chowhound thinks are the best chocolate shops in the United States and how it determined them, which I think is really interesting because before we have to figure out what the absolute best chocolate shops are in the United States, we need to figure out what do we mean when we say absolute best chocolate shops. And before I start into that, just a real quick shout out to Julie McLean at Sibusura in North Carolina. Hey, Julie, thanks for checking in today. And do you have a favorite chocolate shop in North Carolina? If anybody is listening, watching, and they have a favorite chocolate shop in the state where they live or the city that they live outside the United States or the country that they live, just put the name of the chocolate shop into the comments. And there's a chance I might have been there. And we can talk about that as well. Anyway, so let's jump on it. So whenever I see a listicle like this, before I jump into that, here is the post for today's episode, right? And it provides a list of resources and the run of show and my thinking for why it is that I'm doing what it is that I'm doing. So you don't have to grab the URLs from the screen. I don't even know if you're going to be able to see them completely. But you can go to The Chocolate Life and you can find all the resources that are associated with this episode at your leisure when you're doing it. So with that out of the way, let's go take a look at this. So when I look at a listicle like this, I look at an article, a post like this, there are two things that immediately come to mind. Number one, who's the author? And number two, what's their methodology? And so in this particular case, right at the top, we can click on the name of the author, Chris Dudley. We go to his bio, and we found that, he was an editorial assistant at Gourmet. I assume that's Gourmet magazine. While still in culinary school, he is certified as a competition barbecue judge and has judged jam, jelly, and pie contests. That's really, really cool. And he is also a music fan. For his first ever published article, he interviewed Chrissie Hynde of The Pretenders. I mean, one of my favorite songs is "My City Was Gone" from The Pretenders, which is about the state of Ohio. Anyway, so I get it. I understand Chrissie Hynde, and he was a graduate of the French Culinary Institute. So I would say that, right, the author had some background that would make him know something about the topic that he's discussing. But because this is the internet, we have that capability. What I've done is I've gone and said, can I look up the methodology? How did Chris go about determining these things? And it says here that methodology, he said, oh, really interesting. There's some text here that oh, you know what? I'm at the wrong part of the page. That's why, because there are 2 articles on this page. Let's go find the first instance of the word methodology on the page. And it says that we scoured the web, read customer reviews, lurked on message boards, and looked for recommendations in both local and national publications to make our picks. And so when he says absolute best, I don't know that the author of this has tasted any of the chocolate that he's writing about, which is, I think, an interesting admission. So how do they know it's the absolute best? They're relying on Yelp reviews, maybe Facebook reviews, Reddit reviews, right? Who knows how they went about and determined it? We don't know anything about the rubric. How did they weight this and that and the other? So the methodology for coming up with the 50 best makes me think that the absolute best, right, is like a clickbait and switch. I like rather than clickbait or bait and switch. Clickbait and switch article. They want to get you here, and then what are you going to learn about whether or not these are absolutely the best chocolate shops in every state? Before I go on to the next point, Julie says French Broad, chocolates in Asheville, great guys, excellent chocolate. The dairy. This is Sam Ratto. So French Broad in Asheville. It's named for the French Broad River, which runs through Asheville, North Carolina. It was founded in part by Dan and Jael Radigan, and started out as a coffee shop and grew into this bean-to-bar chocolate manufacturing facility. I sold them one of their first tempering machines, if not their first tempering machine, I think back in 2012, 2013. So my history with them goes back really far. I visited their factory in Asheville, and then I've also visited the Videri factory, founded by Sam Ratto, in Raleigh. On a trip, I was taking my daughter to go visit colleges. And one of the colleges she was thinking about going to, she ended up going to UMass Amherst, but one of the colleges was, is it UNC or NC State? I forget. That was in Raleigh. And so while we were there, we went and visited Sam Ratto at Videri. We also went to visit Escazú and a couple of other places in the state. So it was a fabulous trip. So I would agree with you. Both of these are excellent from the bean. They're both bean to bar chocolate shops and chocolate makers. So I would agree with you there. Very different experiences when you engage in the shops as well. So yeah, absolutely. Julie, thanks for those. And then I want to say hello to Jose de la Cruz Fuentes, who is waving hello to us. Saludos desde España. So hello from Spain. Jose, thank you very much for giving us a shout out, and I'm glad that you're watching. I haven't been to Spain in a very long time. The last time I was there was in 1986. I traveled through Andorra. I drove through Andorra from up the Pyrenees from France, and then drove from Andorra to Barcelona, and then up the coast back to Nice. So my remembrances and my experiences with chocolate in Spain are not that great. I have colleagues who work in Madrid and other places like that. So Jose, if you have a favorite shop anywhere in Spain, let me know. I will put it on my itinerary, and I would gladly go there the next time I visit Spain. I have been to Portugal more recently, but not to Spain. I would love to go back. I had a fabulous time. But in any event, let's get back to this. So when we say absolute best chocolate shops, so number one, we're not certain that Chris Dudley, who is the author, who appears to have some background as a judge, barbecue, jams, jellies, and pies, that's very cool, right? And went to culinary school, or the French Culinary Institute, so solid background there. But it doesn't appear that he's tasted everything. So the methodology was to look at social media, for the most part, reviews of one form or another, to figure it out, right? But what we want to do is we also want to read the intro and ask ourselves, sort of, based on the previous couple of episodes I put together, Did Chris write them himself? Might he have had some help in writing this? So there aren't necessarily a whole lot of hallmarks of AI in terms of the writing style that contributed to this. It's really, really interesting how the facts are represented. So it says cacao plants are native to South America, cacao trees rather than plants. I mean, we can, I'm really getting quibbling here, but chocolate was drank. Chocolate was drank, chocolate was drunk. So I'm not certain where the editorial team was on this. Chances are there is no editorial team. So if he's not using a tool like Grammarly to check spelling and grammar in real time, I don't know if this ever would have been reviewed by anybody, but it's surprised that this was published some months ago and nobody's picked this up. Chocolate was drank first as an intoxicant. Well, it could have been that fermented cacao pulp, right? Cacao juice, or cacao juice was left to ferment and it was drunk as an intoxicant. But cacao pulp is not chocolate. The reason why I mention this is that stuff like this has a tendency, or small facts like this have a tendency to be adopted by a large group of people. And you spend a lot of time, I spend a lot of time working to try to figure out how do I counteract, or how do I correct in one form or another these small factoids that everybody believes are right but turn out to be incorrect. So I'm quibbling here, right? In part because I was looking to say, okay, how does this relate to, for example, the use of tools, or AI tools, writing tools of one form or another? So chocolate was drank first as an intoxicant and later as a treat. Yeah, the first hot chocolate beverages, long before it was first appealingly edible. Solid chocolate, I'm not certain why solid chocolate is in air quotes here, because it makes no sense to me that they're in air quotes. Why? Right? Was developed in Switzerland in the 1870s. And this is, that 1870s date is correct. While we do have reports that solid chocolate was being consumed prior to the French Revolution. The Marquis de Sade was a notorious, not only libertine, but also a fan of chocolate. But the chocolate he would have been eating is not the refined chocolate that we think of today. It would have been grittier. It probably was a lot more acidic than what we think of today. But nonetheless, he was eating chocolate pastilles while he was in the Bastille, at least reports. I'm not going to, just little bit of fun history I picked up along the way. But two major inventions in the 1870s, one of which was milk chocolate and the other one was the conch, both of which were pioneered in Switzerland. So what we think of as modern chocolate did not occur fully realized until the 1870s in Switzerland. So that's really cool. So this next paragraph looks like it could have been assisted. You know, he got an AI, he got some results back from an AI prompt and edited them. I don't, it reads to me that way, right? But so here are our favorites, not the absolute best, but here are our favorites in every state, right? Each of the shops made the list for different reasons, right? Not because they were the absolute best, right? But they are unique in location, offerings, and style. So all of that. And so what I went through, and I wanted to find out what it was about these. Now, in order to reduce the delays that are going on, and I can see them happen at some time, I turned off my VPN. And unfortunately, what's happening is, one of the reasons why I don't go to Chowhound very often is there are bazillion ads, and I apologize for doing that. If I had a more rock solid VPN connection, which is not the VPN, it's actually my internet service provider, I would have my VPN on and we'd hide these ads. Sorry about that. All right, but in any event, let's go through. So, okay, so I don't, all right, so let's go through. Alabama, Peazel's Confections. So why am I doing this? I'm not going to go through each of the 50 states, right, and do it, but I want to suggests that there are some things that you can learn, right, as a result of these lists. You which have nothing to do whether or not this is in fact the best chocolate shop in the state of Alabama. Um, right? And here in this particular page, so in Alabama, in Huntsville, Alabama, there's a shop called Pizzell's Confections. And one of the things that we learn from reading the overview, the description of the Pizzell's Confection, is our choice from the Yellowhammer State. And I'm going, Yellowhammer State? I didn't, that's the official nickname for the state of Alabama. I didn't know it was the official nickname for the state of Alabama. I looked it up and then I said, what the heck is a yellowhammer? And it turns out the yellowhammer is the state bird of Alabama. So now it makes sense. So in the process of looking through this, I picked up a little trivia. I will probably forget it tomorrow, right? But now I have a little bit of more information about the state of Alabama. And we see what they're doing is it's a picture of shell molded bonbons. They are highly decorated. So we've got a cocoa butter sheen and we're doing splatter. Not necessarily, and maybe some airbrush technique behind it as well, but definitely splatter techniques as well. They're beautifully crafted from what we can see. Have no idea what the actual taste is, right? But what we do is we find out that Pizzelle are likes to play on popular culture by creating puns on names. So Goodbye Earl for an Earl Grey, Nutty by Banana. So it would be fun. And my guess is that if you were in Huntsville, Alabama, and you were looking for a local chocolatier, that it would be worthwhile stopping by. So very, very cool. But now I know that the yellowhammer is a bird. It's the state bird of Alabama. It's not the only nickname of Alabama, but it's one of the nicknames for the state of Alabama. We go up to Alaska and we find out there's a company in Anchorage. It's known for chocolate covered creams, so Grizzly Claws, which is sort of like probably something which has got caramel and pecan, almond clusters and things like that. So this is a company, right, Alaska Wild Berry Products, that I think fits into the category of chocolatiers that I think of as hometown favorites. So it is the local chocolatier. You may have gone there as a child, and you've got these particular sort of standard kinds of products, not necessarily, well, no, traditional products is probably the best way to think about it, right? They're not going out there. So unlike Pizzell's, which looks like they're having fun with a lot of different flavors, right? These wild berry products look like they're very, very traditional. They also claim to have the largest chocolate waterfowl this side of Willy Wonka. So I don't know that that's true, right? But I can go visit AK Wild Berry and I can go and see if it is. I think that the largest chocolate waterfall is in Las Vegas, right, at one of the hotels, at least dueling chocolate waterfalls. So we'll see, right? So in Arizona, I live in the state of Arizona. Monsoon chocolate in Tucson. So one of the things which is unusual about this, or lacking about this whole list, is that they don't indicate which of these companies make their own chocolate and which one of them are remelters. And Monsoon, from the bean chocolate maker, I've known Adam Krantz, who's the founder of the company, for a long time. But you get a little bit about what they're doing. Flavors are all inspired by the Sonoran Desert, but it doesn't say anything about the fact that they make their own chocolate. Nutty legumes. Mesquite trees are native to the desert and the nutty legumes. It's little things like that that make me wonder about how much time was spent being on editing this or fact checking this. It's given my experience writing for International Confectionery Magazine, given my experience writing for Serious Eats and other publications, there's often a very, very light editing hand that's being done. But also, if you're in Arizona and you're in Phoenix, maybe, or they're in Tucson, you're in the Phoenix area, maybe Zach's Chocolate would be another one to consider. I don't know if Tandy Peterson and Embers has a retail shop, so I don't know if she's got a shop, but these are obviously, focused on retail shops. Many of them would be a part of what I would think of as, members of Retail Confectioners International rather than the Fine Chocolate Industry Association. So it's and as someone who knows about this, I'm curious to ask all of these questions. And but the average visitor to this goes, "Oh, okay, this is interesting." Right. So anyway, Arkansas, Copper Kettle in Fort Smith. I'm looking at this, and this looks like it could be hand rolled centers, which are then dipped. Although I'm not entirely sure, these could be shells. This one in the back here looks like it could be a spherical chocolate shell with a hole in the bottom, which is then piped into. But they're using the same recipes and processes for 4 generations, so maybe hand rolled is the way to go. Uh, I haven't been in Arkansas in like forever. I don't know that I would go out of my way for these, but I found myself, again, this is a hometown favorite. They've been around for 4 generations. You'd go there, at holidays, at a particular, and you would get a selection. Or if you visited your family, or your family was visiting you, they'd bring you something from this because it was comforting and it was a reminder of when you lived there. Uh, that represents most chocolate makers, or chocolatiers anyway, in the United States. They fit in this category of hometown favorites. And so I don't do that to in any way diminish the work that they're doing or the quality of the work that they're doing. Right? Because, for example, if as a child you went to Chillmark Chocolates on Martha's Vineyard, and on your way to the ferry back to the mainland after spending a week with your grandmother, then, and she said, go buy a pound box of whatever it is that you want, and you went there many, many summers as a child, there's no way I can convince you, right? And I won't even try to convince you that Chillmark chocolates are not really, really, really good, sort of objectively, as a chocolate critic with more than 20 years of experience, right? I might say there are objectively better products, right? But my goal as a critic is to help you understand what you like, what you like about what and why you like. Um, and so I would never try to convince you they weren't good. Hometown favorites are the backbone of confectionery, and we tend to forget that if we're focused on high-end single origin craft specialty chocolate. We tend to forget that there are a lot of really, really excellent small confectioners who are not chocolate makers, they're chocolatiers, who do great work all over the country. Somewhere between 3 and 5,000 of them in the United States, and we deserve, we should go and celebrate their work, right? Not just the work of a very narrow range of chocolate makers, even if they're using industrial chocolate, right? There's value in trying them. So, for example, you might say, I'm looking for the best salted butter caramel ganache bonbon or truffle that I can find. And just, every place you go try, if they have a salted caramel ganache, a salted butter caramel ganache, go and try it. Right. That's one of the ways I trained myself early on when I started traveling. Every place I went, I try a Caesar salad. My father made it when I was growing up, and so I had this idea in my mind for what a Caesar salad was. So every place I went, if there was a Caesar salad on the menu, I would order the Caesar salad. If there was a pecan pie on the menu, I would order the pecan pie. If there was guacamole on the menu, I would order the guacamole. And over time, dozens and dozens and dozens of restaurant visits over the course of years of traveling, I built up in my mind what is, my canonical version of what a Caesar salad should be. Right? What is my perfect guacamole? What is my perfect pecan pie? And you can do that by just picking one or two pieces, like a salted butter caramel ganache. or something like that, and then going, ooh, how does this compare against my ideal? And this is a great thing to do for hometown favorites. Uh, People may not know that Danville, California was home to a Hershey factory for many, many years. And so Danville is an interesting choice. Again, I haven't, these, if you take a look at them, these look industrially made. So I am going to go out on a limb and saying what they're doing is they're taking pre-made spherical chocolate shells with a hole on the bottom. They're piping them with whatever center they're using. And then what they're doing is they're filling they're closing up the hole on the bottom. They may be dipping them and then they're drizzling and decorating and things like that. So that's what I'm guessing. Again, ooh, small town chocolate shop. I prefer hometown. All right, but you do. So anyway, so go and take a look. I don't think the Hershey factory is there anymore. I'm pretty sure that it's not, but you can go and take a look. So in Colorado, I haven't, again, I've been to Denver many times. It's been a number of years since the last time I was there. Cultura was not open the last time I was there. But you can go and learn about them. They do a Pignole mini chocolate bar made from heirloom corn. And they focus on Mexican and Caribbean flavors. So when they're also a bean to bar. So their Cultura's bean to bar process. So I want to hide all of these ads. Although this is Colorado, not New Mexico, you know, the notion of there's a cookie in New Mexico called the bizcochito, which are they can be really, really fabulous. All right. But when I'm looking around, I'm looking at lists like this. What I'm looking for is, are they describing, right, an attitude about making chocolate or flavors that would be really interesting to me? And so, you know, so far in everything that I'm doing, the notion that they're using heirloom maize, they're working from cocoa beans. Pignole is, you know, a nut. Well, it comes from pine cone, right? It's a seed, I think, not a nut. We call them pine nuts. I don't know that they're actually nuts. But they grow a lot of them here in Arizona. They grow a lot of them in New Mexico. They're around a lot. And I happen to love them, you know, cook with them a lot in Italian cuisine, but yum. So that's how I look at these things. I spent 40 years in the New York City metropolitan area, including, I want to say 25 years in southern Westchester. So not far from Goshen, Connecticut. I've driven through many, many times, never heard of this company before. Never stopped. It's shell molded. There's not much to distinguish them from everything else. But it comes from a dairy farm. And so I think that, you know, one reason why I would, you know, the next time I am in Connecticut, I would make a trip here, because I think that the notion of using the dairy that comes from the farm in the chocolate is unusual. And I would like to see how the dairy that they produce is used in the chocolate and how that has an effect. I'm hoping that it's fresh, probably not raw, but I'm really, really interested to see how that works. And so I would go there for that. Ooh, they'll even let you meet the cows. So yum. That's pretty cool. This company here, the Saltwater Taffy in Rehoboth Beach, this is one of the companies that they mentioned. You know, in Delaware, this, right, in Missouri, that. Saltwater taffy. So when I was growing up in Southern California, there was a place. It was like around Laguna, which is called Balboa Island. And Balboa Island, there was a carnival. And I remember going and doing the Ferris wheel and all the rides and going into shops that specialized in saltwater taffy. I probably haven't had saltwater toffee since 1976, maybe. Maybe I've had it once or twice since then, but the last time I know I've had it was in 1976 on Balboa Island, probably around the same time, the same week at least, where I had my last chocolate-covered frozen banana, right? And it wasn't chocolate; it would have been compound. Um, but there is a sense of the seaside. There is a sense of this connection to childhood. And so taking a saltwater taffy and enrobing it or dipping it in chocolate, I'm guessing, I'm looking at how big the feet are on this one, and I'm guessing that it is dipped rather than enrobed, but I'm pretty cool, right? So I would, if I was going through Rehoboth Beach, I would definitely make a point of stopping this for a bit of childhood nostalgia connection, right? Uh, so just for fun, I asked Google Gemini, right, to see if it could give me a route. So give me an optimum route to visit all 50 of these shops. Can you? And it said, like, that's computationally too expensive. It would take forever. I can't do that. But it did give me a list of them from this product. And there are only the first 4 or 5 um, from this. So I thought that would be very cool. Here's a list of 50 chocolate makers or chocolatiers. Here's a list of 50 chocolate shops. I have an address. If I were to start off in, let's say, Los Angeles, what would be the optimal driving route to go and visit each one of these chocolatiers? Because it could be a great idea for a road trip, I think. Right, you've got a couple of weeks over the course of the summer. You want to go and visit it. I might do, except maybe Hawaii and Alaska, right? Um, Although driving up to Alaska and back would be fun, would take a lot more time. But if we were to do this in the continental United States, so it was, it occupied some CPU cycles in the background yesterday when I was working on this. So Florida, Ben B. Coco. So for me, lists like this are less useful as an indicator that these are the absolute best, right? And more an indicator of, oh, are there any places here I've never heard of before? And so here is this Ben B. Coco. I believe that they do some um, bean to bar, so they do work from that. Um, they're doing painted shell molded work, but they work with exotic truffles. They are in Miami. So other places in Florida, I mean, Norman Love would be one of my first thoughts that came out of my brain when I'm thinking about it. But there are a bunch of, craft chocolate makers and chocolatiers working in the state of Florida, and this would never have crossed my mind as being one of the absolute best. And it would never cross my mind because I've never heard it before, right? And so a list like this is often really good about, oh, can I find a place that I've never heard of before, right? Fully kosher, cool, right? So if that's important to you, then you've got it. And by the way, for every single one, a lot of work for every single one of these shops. We do have a URL, we do have a street address, and we do have a phone number. So it's a great resource, and I'll talk about some things I did with that um, after a while. So in Georgia, Chocolato in Atlanta, as a craft chocolate person, I might think of Cacao Atlanta, right? Chocolato apparently is also works from the beans. They're from Costa Rica. And so that's interesting. Again, I've never heard of them before. Lava Loa, I mean, in Hawaii, I mean, again, if I'm thinking about chocolate in Hawaii, I might think about Manoa first, but it's mainly bars and not confectionery. So, but but this is a bean to bar chocolate maker. You don't have Lonohana. There are lots of chocolate makers in Hawaii, and so it's interesting why this one was chosen. And so it becomes a starting point for doing some research, which is another great thing. Don't necessarily take these as being quote unquote the absolute best, but where's a starting place on your journey? It's in Hilo. I might go to Google Maps and I might say, so here's Google Maps. I was doing some research early this morning on Venice about Harry's Bar, and I would say chocolate um, shops in Hilo, Hawaii. And it will give me a list of chocolate shops in Hilo, Hawaii, right? And here it is. They do farm tours. That's really cool. Uh, you can see how this can take you from one place to another place relatively quickly. So Hawaii, again, I'm not going to go through every single one of these things. Some of these are big national brands, so you can find the brand in retail stores around the country. You don't necessarily have to go to um, this shop in Indiana, in Fort Wayne. Um, Old time candy shop. The spelling of this and the name of it gives you an idea that, again, this is it. Oh, it's relatively new. The Midwestern Chocolate Factory has been in business since 1878, owned by the Palmer family during that entire time, but they only had a retail shop since 2007. Right, so focusing on nostalgic flavors. Right, in Iowa, it's possible. I mean, I don't know much about chocolate shops in Iowa. Right? The last time I was in Iowa, I was on a Greyhound bus, I believe. So it's been a while. In Kansas, Anadore's Fine Chocolate in Westwood Hills. Um, so I find it's interesting. This enchanting little chocolate shop specializes in picture-perfect European-style truffles. They have other offerings like barks and turtles, but you probably won't find any bonbons. There's a difference. Interesting, but they don't talk about that. What they do is they link to, there's a difference is actually a link to another article, which is what's the difference between a bonbon and a truffle, right? And what the differentiation they're making here is that bonbons are molded, and in this case, shell molded, right? Whereas truffles are a chocolate filling that is rolled in ingredients. So they're talking about bonbons being shell molded, right? And truffles are being hand rolled, right? That seems to be the way the distinction is, but there's no differentiation between, where does something which is slabbed, like a slab ganache or ganache, a slab ganache or caramel, which is enrobed, right? And so the original use of the word truffle is from the French truffe, and truffe nature, specifically a natural truffle, because the hand rolled truffle, when it was rolled in chocolate, reminded them of a truffle that would be used, a white truffle, a black truffle, or a white truffle that would be used for culinary applications rather than dessert applications. So it's interesting that they went there. It's hard to know. This is a partial definition, right? And it's one I covered in my book, the difference between a bonbon and truffle and the different methods that these things get produced. Bonbon is just a French term that means good, and literally just good. Um, and then we got shell molded, and as opposed to slab. There's a lot of nuance which goes into this, and unfortunately, there's not a whole lot of time to get into nuance when you're doing um, these kinds of um, articles. So we're in Kansas, Kentucky, Art Eatables. One of the things that I did take a look at is I went and looked at them because I wanted for each one of each one of these companies, one of the things I wanted to find out is if they do any production from the beans, right? So if any of them are bean to bar makers or they're only chocolatiers who are remelting. So I went to the Art Eatables website, and one of the things that I found out is they make something called the Mojeska. Right. This is another bit of learning. Like I learned that yellowhammer is the state bird of Alabama, but I'd never heard of a Mojeska. What is a Mojeska? So a Mojeska, and I learned about this by going to the Art Eatables website, where this is one of their specialties. A Mojeska is a caramel-covered marshmallow candy invented in the 1880s by Anton Bussath in Louisville, Kentucky. And Art Eatables is in Louisville. Right. So for me, this trivia is what makes the history of chocolate and confectionery and chocolatiers in the United States really, really interesting. And so, who invented it? Anton Bussath. When? In the early 1880s. So this is during Reconstruction. So that's an interesting time in the United States. But he named the candy after Helena Modjeska, right? A famous Polish actress who was performing in Louisville at the time. He asked her permission to use the name. She graciously agreed. And it's basically a caramel covered marshmallow. Pretty cool, right? And I don't know, how much any of you know about the history of desserts, but the national dessert of New Zealand is called the pavlova, and it is a meringue which is covered in fruit, but it's named for an opera star, right? Pavlova. And a similar kind of thing. This opera star was traveling in New Zealand at the time. Somebody came up with a dessert and wanted to name it for her, right? And so the Modjeska follows along in that tradition. And there are a bunch of other ones, if we start taking a look at the history, which are really quite interesting. Louisiana, Piety and Desire. I know the owner of this company. They do great work. I've never visited the shop, but we've talked about doing it. He is a from the bean chocolate maker, which is not described here, unfortunately. But if you find yourself in New Orleans, they're on Magazine Street, which I believe that means they're in the Garden District. And it's worthwhile getting on the streetcar and taking it out and go visiting Piety and Desire because they do good work. I'm blanking on the name, unfortunately. I don't remember, unfortunately. Good work. Are there other, if you are in New Orleans, you are going to want to go find a traditional praline as opposed to a praline or a praline, another overloaded word in the world of chocolate and confectionery. But you are going to, in the district, so in the same part of the quarter, just down the street in the market, down from Café du Monde and beignets and chicory coffee, you'll find some great pralines. It's worthwhile trying a praline. But if you want something which is much more upscale, you're looking for a gift to bring to a party or to your host, if you're hanging out with friends, then certainly Piety and Desire. Again, I have a personal connection with the founder of the company, and I can't recommend it more highly. I don't know. There used to be a store in New Orleans called Sucre. The founder of that was Tarek Hanna, whom I met when I was working for the World Pastry Forum and the World Pastry Team Championships. It's closed down, I believe. I think it might have closed down before COVID, but I definitely know that it is closed down now. But it would be, these two would be up at the top of my list of places to go for chocolate in New Orleans. I don't know about the rest of the state of Louisiana. And this is an interesting thing to go and think about. So Bixby Chocolate, it was founded by Kate McAleer. I know, McAteer. But I sold her a tempering machine. I saw her last at the Northwest Chocolate Festival in Seattle a bunch of years ago. They work from the bean. Their focus on Maine ingredients. There are other chocolate makers and confectioners in Maine. Some of them fit into the hometown favorite category, so I wouldn't overlook those. But if you're in Rockland, Maine, or on your way to Rockland, Maine, from Massachusetts or from New Hampshire, it's worthwhile going and stopping and going and visiting, because you can watch them make chocolate in their shop. And this is what I want to talk about when using a list like this. So it occurred to me, because I'm a data geek and I like to get information from people for websites, is could I go and ask Google Gemini, so I'm using an AI tool, could I go to Gemini and say, can you grab all of the information about all of these companies and put it into a spreadsheet for me? And they did. So here's that list. So I was able very, very quickly to ask Gemini, here's a URL, here's a page. Go grab the name, the description, the website address, street name and phone number, and put it into a table that I can put into a spreadsheet. And here is the answer to that, right? So for someone like me who's interested in putting together databases of chocolate makers and confectioners and chocolatiers, I'm going, oh my gosh, this is one of the best uses of AI I could think of, right? To go through so I don't have to cut and paste all this information by hand, right? So I spent a little while yesterday doing this, trying to figure out what prompt, right, I could use to get Gemini to do this. And so I got it to do this. Now, what I also said, hey, Gemini, please go and create a list of the top, I'm not defining what the top is, right? The top chocolate shops were by state. And so it gave me a list of 50 chocolate, one for each state, 51, of course, because there's a header row here. And then I put them side by side, right? So this is really cool. I can say, so in yellow, this is when the Chowhound list and the Gemini list agree that this is the top shop in each state, right? And I have a list, because Gemini will do this for me, of all of the sources that it scraped and looked at in order to come up with this list here, the Gemini list. Whereas this is, I don't know the methodology of it. And so if it's yellow, it means that this company appears on both lists, which is interesting. Now, I added a little more information. This bean to bee, is this company do bean to bar? Just, I want to know, right? And so yes and no. And now I've got it's a much more interesting list in many, many ways. So I can start comparing it. And now I can use this list. And what can I do that's different, right? Where can I take this list? So I asked it about metropolitan DMAs, which are direct marketing areas. So a DMA might be the New York City metropolitan area, the Los Angeles metropolitan area, the San Francisco metropolitan area, right? And I said to Gemini, hey, Gemini, please put together a list of the top 5 chocolate shop and each of the top 50 DMAs. And I'm going to have to do this in tranches because it gave me 12, right? But here's a list of what Gemini thinks of are the top 5 chocolate shops in the New York DMA. So this includes Westchester, not just New York City. It includes Long Island. It includes parts of New Jersey. It may include parts of New Jersey. I'm not entirely sure, right? But it's got the top 5, right, chocolate shops in the area, and it gives me a description, and I've got the address, and I've got the phone number and the website. Now, if there were a use for an AI tool, right, I would say, oh, I'm starting to do this right now in another way because I'm thinking about it. It's like, hey, Gemini, give me a list of chocolate shops in the 6th arrondissement of Paris, right? So if I'm going there, where am I going to go find chocolate shops? Now, I know most of these. Some of them are really interesting, but I have the name of the shop, I have the street address, I have a phone number, I've got a website URL, and I said, please translate the description into English at the same time. And I'm thinking, you know what? I'm going to do this for the 5th and the 7th and the 1st and the 8th. I'm going to do this so I have an arrondissement by arrondissement guide to chocolate in Paris. Now, unfortunately, it likes the number 12 and 13. So it gives me 12 or 13 entries for this one. But these are uses that I can get behind, and I'm going to need to learn how to go and use these effectively to get what it is, get the data that I am looking for. Right. So I can do this for Amsterdam. I can do this for Barcelona. I could do this for Genoa. I'm going, oh my gosh, this is something that would take me hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours to do by hand, right? And it's the idea of taking this list of what Chowhound thinks are the absolute best chocolate shops, right, in each state, right, has led me onto this really, really fascinating journey to figure out how can I use these tools, right, to help me find information about chocolatiers and chocolate makers. So I could ask it for the top 100 bean to bar chocolate makers in Canada. the top 100 bean to bar chocolate makers in the United States. And I'm going to. And I'm going to say, put the information in a table, right? Give me the website. I am just like, as you can tell, I'm just like, yay, this is really, really interesting. And I'm looking forward to going about doing it. I'm inspired by doing this. I've had a lot of trouble getting the data out of, for example, the International Chocolate Awards and putting it into a format that's usable. And I'm going, ooh, maybe I can figure out how to prompt Gemini or ChatGPT or Mistral or some other large language model. And how am I going to go ahead and make that work? Really, really cool, really, really interesting. But the primary benefit of the primary approach, what I really want to talk to you about, is that when you find a list like this, do not accept it at face value. Number one, find out what the background to the author is, and if they publish a methodology, go and look at what the methodology is. Right? What they have probably done is that this title here is a clickbait and switch title. In my opinion, these are clearly not the absolute best. I could go to Pennsylvania, right? And Fred Larashi in Harrisburg, I mean, he does amazing work. He's really, really wonderful. He does really, really good work. But I'm going, is he better than Chris Curtin and Eclat in Westchester, Pennsylvania? Is he better than John and Kira's? I don't know the answer to that question. If I was interested in craft chocolate, I might go the best chocolate shop is Mon Ami in Pittsburgh, which talks a lot about the topic here, about what do we mean by absolute best, right? And what are our criteria around that best? Do I want the most popular, right? Which seems to be where this is going, right? So these appear to be popular on social media websites. These are the ones that get written most about, right? Right. Is that what I mean, right? Is my focus on exploring shops that are known for having a lot of craft specialty chocolate bars? That would be a very different, very, very different list. I'm coming here in this Chowhound, I asked it to do the top 5 DMAs. And for example, Cocoa Store in New York, Cocoa Store, which is in Manhattan, as well as The Meadow, also in Manhattan, does not appear here. And I don't have Portland, Oregon as one of the top DMAs. It's not that big, but there's a Meadow in Portland. And so is it there? So think about what you're looking for in terms of absolute best. Am I looking for hometown favorite? I'm looking for a chocolate maker or a chocolatier that's been in the state that is more than 100 years old, right? Ooh, that would be, show me about tradition, right? Talk to me about, am I looking for ones that do exotic flavors? And am I looking for ones that are focusing on bean to bar production? So when you're going and looking at these articles, things like the absolute best chocolate shop in every state, think about what you are looking for, right? In your idea of, again, what is the absolute best? Again, going back to Pennsylvania, I mean, I'm looking at this cross section. I'm going, number one, wow, these shells are really thick, right? So not sure what that's all about. There's a huge air gap here, right? So if I look at this, I mean, not only is the shell thick, but it appears to be inconsistent around the corner, or around the edges. It's thicker here than it is here. And I'm going, maybe, I don't understand that it's overall thicker than I would expect. But if I've got these air gaps in here, that is an opportunity so if I was this chocolatier, I would never have shown this particular cross section here, but I don't necessarily think it represents, very, very high quality work, right? So think about that. If you are a practicing confectioner, you're going, chocolatier, do I think this is good work? But right, he has been named one of the 10 best. So this named one of the 10 best chocolatiers in North America. That represents probably Pastry Art and Design magazine or Dessert Professional magazine. I used to work for both of those publications. Used to write for both of those publications. So that may be where it was. And I do remember that Frederick was right? So I don't recognize any of the other people on this list of receiving that particular designation. Again, go with your background, go and take a look and understand truly what it is that's going on here in order to be able to make a decision. Another way to go about using this is saying, I am traveling from this city, I'm driving from this city to that city, right? Can you give me the name of chocolatiers? Right, so you could do this in Google Maps, which is, obviously it's tying into Gemini in the background or some other AI process in the background. Can you give me chocolate shops I can visit along the way? What would be another great way to use this thing? And then, right, chocolate shops, right? I'm looking for, you know, chocolate shops that have been around for more than 40 years or something like that. So just to hone in on it. And it makes sense to go and try out some of these prompts, right? And find out what you get when you're doing it. Again, I use Gmail. I have a Google Workspace account. The Google Gemini Pro is a part of my Google Workspace account. And so that's why I'm using Gemini for much of what it is that I'm doing. I've also been the user of a browser called Arc, and many people know that I've been a user of Arc. I've talked about it sometime, and they now have a new research tool. It's very, very different from Arc, called Dia, which is designed to be sort of a conversational research assistant. So you can ask it questions about multiple tabs that you have open in a browser window, and it will go and analyze what's in the tabs in the browser window, and it will respond to them. And it uses different LLMs than Gemini, and so I can ask these two different LLMs exactly the same question, so with the same prompt, and I'll come up with two different results. It's just fascinating for me. It's just fascinating for me to do that. And what, among other things, it's where this listicle. By the way, if you go to Adobe Stock and type in the word listicle, very little of what you'll do has anything to do with lists. It wants to interpret listicle as a part of male genitalia. To to it was really quite funny. I got all these images, and I'm going, huh? What do these have to do with lists? And I realized that they don't have anything to do with lists. And with that, we're near the end of this episode of Pod Save Chocolate. I want to thank everybody for joining me today. I want to thank everybody who's given me a shout out, talk to me in the comments. Thank you very much. This episode of Pod Save Chocolate, like every episode, is sponsored by the members of the Chocolate Life. This is the homepage of the Chocolate Life. You can go there now. You can click on the green button on the upper right-hand corner, and it'll say join. If you're not logged in, you can sign up for a free membership. You can sign up for a premium membership. But I make all this content and I give it away for free to anybody on the internet who wants to consume it. And so if you want to support the work I do, you can go to The Chocolate Life and become a member. Here is the link to the post for today's episode. It's here in what I call the top rail. So a Chowhound listicle review. If you were a member, and I sent this email out to every single member yesterday, it's my position on the use of AI tools. And I describe how I use AI, I don't use AI. I give you the general policies, and I go through 6 use cases about how AI is going to be used on the website. And so that what you can do is you can know, right, when I am using AI. What I will say is I will not use AI to do original content creation. I'm not going to use it to generate imagery, and I'm not going to give it a prompt, ask it to write some text and use that text. I'm not going to do that. I use AIs for the kinds of research that I showed you today. So taking what it is that I learned about something, and then how do I go about using that to find more things? That's how I use it. So I just wanted, now this is not limited to members. It's not a members only post. So you can go to the Chocolate Life right now and you can find out more about it. Right. I am experimenting with AI in a different way, which is I was connected to a colleague of mine, somebody I've known since the 1980s. and we're working on creating a conversational agent. So you can see a link down here on the lower right-hand corner. You can go to the archives page. And what we've got here is a conversational agent. And you can ask this agent about any content which is on this page, right? And it will respond. And so I'm looking at ways to incorporate conversational agents into the Chocolate Life so that as a different kind of experience than just simply searching for words, right, across the entire site. So this is going to be a complement to the search capabilities. I'm also, if you have a Shopify account and you'd like to think about embedding a conversational agent into your Shopify account as a sort of virtual shopkeeper, a virtual assistant when somebody walks in, that's something that I am actively exploring with the people who are building this technology, because that's an application that makes a huge amount of sense. So if you are interested, you can reach out to me and you can connect with me on that. Finally, again, Julie, last shout out for the day. Thank you for your time. It's been a pleasure. Julie, thanks for staying with me all day. It's always a pleasure. I learn just as much doing these things as I hope I can teach you, or you learn from me over the course of doing it. Here is the post for today's episode. You can go there. You can find the links to all these resources, the link to this post, right? I tell you what I was thinking of, why I was doing it, and all that other kind of stuff. And there's a link to the Chowhound Instagram account as well. And with that, that's all I have to say for today. I don't have an episode scheduled for Friday. I don't know what it's going to be yet. It's the summer, and I'm keeping, what I'm going to write and what I'm going to talk about in a much more informal kind of way. I'm not thinking about things, right, and scheduling weeks and months in advance. If that's okay with you, I'm going to get inspired later today or tomorrow to do something, and I will talk about that, and I will post before then on Friday's episode. And with that, again, just thanks everybody for joining me. I will be back on Friday with the next episode of Pod Save Chocolate, episode 129. And until then, remember, if you're working with chocolate and you're not having fun, and I hope you can tell from the excitement that I get, right, when I talk about some of these things, I am having fun. It may be something boring like, ooh, data collection, data aggregation. How can I find all these kinds of stuff, and how can I make it easier on me? How do I not have to cut and paste information right from pages? I am having fun, and I hope you're having fun too. And with that, until the next time, everyone, ciao.